this music is too cheesy right now. All right. Hey, Monica.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, everybody out there. Really excited to have everyone here. Doing a Sake 101 tonight. We're going to look through 4 different bottles. And I think just have a good time talking about them, how we like to drink them at home, and sharing them with you. So, Monica, kampai.
Kampai. Well, hi, everyone. I don't know what time it is for you. It's 7 p.m. here in New York, and I think it's 6 o'clock where Jonathan is. I just wanted to start by introducing myself. I am the director of sake for Drink Portal, and we have a pretty broad lineup if you check out our website. But I wanted to keep it simple tonight and start with some sakes that I think are perfect for a night in, which hopefully most of you are having tonight. And yeah, we're going to get started with some night swim. I don't know if you guys have ever had sake in a can before. It is currently our preferred choice, as I've been doing a lot of dishes lately, and this requires absolutely no cleanup. So night swim is a sake from Tozai. Tozai means east meets west. It's a sake produced in Kyoto, which is the birthplace of sake. And as their mascot, or kind of the emblem, the brewery chooses to use a koi fish. Koi fish are the longest living creatures in Japan. They can live for up to 250 years, I think, in one case. And we wanted to have a little more fun with sake. I think that some of you watching have probably not had that much sake because you feel like there's so many rules about it, or there's so much that you need to learn or get special glassware. And this is part of our mission to get sake to be taken a little less seriously, which is also part of the night swim. We've been working with Tozai and this koi fish for well over a decade now, but we wanted to make it a little more irreverent, a little more breaking the rules. I think night swim means something different to everyone, whether it's skinny dipping or being just drinking a lot and bar crawling and kind of swimming your way through the evening. I think no matter how you interpret it, you know you're gonna have a good time. So one other thing that Jonathan and I have been talking about is that when we're at home by ourselves with all this time to drink by ourselves, a lot of these rules that exist in sake, well, there's really only one rule that we always follow, is to pour for other people. But when you're by yourself, that rule goes out the window. And this is a really easy way to avoid that rule and still be able to drink delicious sake. So kampai.
Kampai. Jonathan. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of, this guy's just so easy drinking, really gentle, and it's not too much of anything. A little lighter on the ABV, right down the middle of the line taste-wise on sweetness, on acidity. Just everything is really approachable and really lovely in the sake. So I know I like to do this. It's just kind of like my drinker, not a thinker. Like when I want something tasty, but I don't want to have to stress about it too much.
Yeah, it is really soft and mild. We always try to use the tagline night in with night swim, which I think this is perfect for. You know, it has a lot of these baked rustic aromas and flavors to me, a little more banana nut bread. Most sake has some element of dairy or lactic, which is interesting because it doesn't always exist with wine. And with wine, it points to some different elements of winemaking. But for sake, whether it's like bright tart yogurt or really milky, creamy, or even fresh cheese or even matured cheese, there usually is some sort of dairy element. For me, this is a lot of fresh milk, fresh cream, and maybe a little orange peel.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the fruits in there are really like sometimes soft, gentle citrus, not all the way lemon. I like orange peel a lot.
So yeah, I wanted to start here because this is my first drink of the day. Might not be yours, but I think with 15% alcohol, it's really mellow. I know 15% probably sounds high as it relates to wine, but for sake, 15 is right there, is almost on the medium low side. And it's just a really easy buzz and is not hard on your body at all.
So your preferred glassware with this, Monica, just straight out of the can?
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean,
I prefer it straight out of the can.
You can toss it in anything. Like if you need to fancy it up, you can get out your stemless if you need to, but no reason not to just have it straight out of there.
Yeah. I mean, I think certain sakes taste better out of a can too. We can actually, as we go down the line, we can taste between two cans and you'll see that the openings are a little different here. And this one really, I feel like it's not a sensory deprivation exercise, but it's really different when you drink it out of a glass. This sake is super casual for me. It's just as delicious out of a glass, but maybe a little less refreshing. I feel like this one's made to be consumed at a barbecue, outdoors, just something that you drink on the ski lifts or on a hike. It just, I feel like it no accessories necessary.
Absolutely. Well, and the nice thing about the can, you can toss it to your buddy who's 6 feet away. And you guys can still hang out in the backyard and drink together. Jen piped in that she definitely got the orange too. So for all you guys tuning in, if you have these sakes, if you already got them through Portal or through someone else, feel free to, chime in with what you're tasting or what you're smelling as we go through.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about how to taste sake a little bit as we're getting into the first couple too. One thing that's really nice for me, my boyfriend works in champagne and I work in sake, and those are wildly different acid levels. I love champagne, but when I taste it the way that I taste sake, I find that I wake up the next morning and I feel like my teeth are about to fall out, because I really like to let it sit in my mouth for a long time and hit every part of your tongue in your mouth, which I feel like with Riesling and champagne and certain higher acid wines, your dentist would murder you if you tasted wines like that. And with sake and with Japanese food and drink in general, we're talking a lot about what's happening inside of your mouth, like the combination of all of these different things happening. So I like to let it sit there for a while. Um, and if you are drinking out of a glass, which we'll do later, it's nice to try to inhale the aroma as you're drinking the sake. So you can experience the retronasal aromas as well as the orthonasal aromas.
Absolutely. Well, and I think to kind of what I'm feeling these days, especially with your comments on acidity, don't let the fresh haircut fool you. Every year I get another scratch on my bedpost there when I wake up on my birthday. I'm finding I'm getting like acid reflux way, way more, to the point where even like one or two beers and I'm good. And I'm finding sake always treats me a little more gently. And especially when we're like we said, the little lighter, more approachable style of the night swim.
Yeah.
Want to talk about Bushido some now as well?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So Bushido is like the party animal sibling to Night Swim, where Night Swim is really mellow. It's easy. It's got these nice warm round characteristics. Bushido is spicy and punchy, but still really easy drinking, kind of dangerously easy drinking. You'll see the way that I'm opening it, the whole top comes off, which lends itself to all kinds of applications. So Bushido is, for those of you who watch a lot of Japanese movies or into Japanese culture, you might already know about Bushido, but it is the way of the warrior or the samurai code. And we came up with this concept a few years ago, and we wanted to drinking sake in a can is something that you see a lot in Japan, but there's a very class level association with drinking sake in a can. It's thought to be very blue collar. And a lot of people kind of turn their nose up at drinking sake in a can, like, oh, that's for college kids or that's for salarymen. And we love drinking sake in a can. So we wanted to premiumize this concept and do it in a way that was really fun, but still really authentic. So when we arrived on the name Bushido, we knew we wanted something really powerful and really aggressive to go with that warrior energy. But we also wanted to make it premium. So this is a Ginjo Genshu. Ginjo refers to premium sake. To a very small percentage of sake that's made in Japan qualifies as ginjo. It has to be fermented at a cold temperature for a long time. The rice is really highly refined, so you're getting a lot of purity, a lot of fresh fruit. But then genshu means undiluted. So this is 18% alcohol. So we started with night swim, night in with night swim, very mellow, 15%. And now we're having Bushido, which is a little more aggressive. It's when you want to channel your inner warrior, whether you're trying to work up the liquid courage to attack something that you wouldn't on a daily day-to-day basis, or if you really want to get the night started and you don't want to drink something that's going to make you tired later. One of the greatest things about sake is it's an incredibly lucid, kind of energetic buzz. And Bushido, I don't know if it's psychosomatic, but I always feel like I have more energy when I drink this. Um, Talking about the aromas and flavors, the night swim is definitely more rustic, as I was saying earlier, and a little more settled and round, where the Bushido is pretty bright. There's a lot of bright tart qualities of Bushido, from the like slightly green watermelon rind qualities, tart raspberry, very spicy white pepper. And one thing that's great about drinking Genshu, especially in this kind of casual setting, so this is 18% alcohol, and I drink these in the warm weather outside all the time. And so if I have these out by the pool and the sun is just beaming down on this black aluminum can, it's going to start getting warm. And midway through, I can drop a giant cube of ice right in the top, and it's not going to overly dilute the sake. And I sometimes I even freeze like coconut water or I am not a mixologist. My colleague Jonathan is, so I think he's going to tell you about the more elevated things you can do in the can here.
Well, I think like a lot of things with sake, and like you said earlier, we're not trying to make things more complicated. It's about making it approachable. So, one of my favorite things to do is throw Bushido in the freezer for just like an hour, 2 hours overnight. It doesn't really matter. It's really forgiving with that 18% alcohol. And then when you pull it out, rip that top all the way off. You have a plastic lid that comes along with it. And so now essentially what you have here is a little to-go cocktail shaker with all your booze already in there. So I got my kind of wonky live stream set up with a little lime back. Ooh, where is it? There we go. A little lime back here. Literally, just to keep it easy, but something fun and even more refreshing. I'm going to take the lime, squeeze it right into the Bushido can. Choose one of your favorite bitters. I'm a huge fan of Peychaud's, personally, just as like an all-around anything goes kind of bitter. But there's no wrong answer. Just did a couple dashes right in there. Top goes on with ice, without ice, doesn't really matter. Give it a little shake. And you can see right away, I'll grab one of my pieces of glassware over here. We got a nice little bit of pink hue to it. It's just got that little bit of extra citrus zip, a little more refreshing. Not that it really needs much, but it just makes it fun. Like my buddies and I all like to go tubing. You know, you get on a river, you can throw some Bushido in and let it float along with you, and it'll kind of keep river cold, and you can pop it out and just drink it however you want as you're going down the river.
That sounds great. I mean, I feel like I have nothing against sake cocktails, but I feel like so many of them that I have just totally cover up the flavor of the sake. But that sounds really like mild and delicate, and like you still let the sake shine. Does a can of Bushido totally freeze if you leave it in the freezer long enough?
It'll get really close, almost like a slushy. So imagine like, you know, you're a kid going to Dairy Queen and you're getting your giant blue slushy. That's sort of the consistency Bushido comes out at. And so it can be really fun to play around with that, throwing some different sugars or juices or modifiers, we like to call them, you know, vermouths or bitters or whatever, and throwing them in there to kind of play around with the flavors. And I think you nailed it, Monica. Like this still, what I have in the can now, still tastes like Bushido, but just a little something extra.
So I was thinking today, as I know we talked about this earlier, but now that we're spending a lot of time at home, I've been doing a lot more meal planning than I ever have in my life in terms of, I mean, I normally travel quite a bit and I'm not home for more than a couple days at a time. So if I make a meal, I really try not to have leftovers and then I leave again. And a combination of knowing I'm cooking quite a bit and not wanting to go to the grocery store a lot. I've been meal planning today and trying to align what I'm drinking with what I'm going to eat. So we're having pizza tonight. I mean, I think Bushido and pizza is just a really classic pairing because the cheese and like the salty crust and the garlic and the tomato, the acid in the tomato, there's so many strong flavors, and Bushido has this like punch and intensity to stand up to all of those. But I'm feeling a little lazy, so I'm doing takeout again tomorrow night, and we're doing Thai food. And night swim, I love night swim with peanut sauce.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
there's something about that like baked banana and orange peel that goes so well with chicken satay. Um, but what I really like about the meal planning is, I know you know this, but you can leave a bottle of sake open for so much longer than a bottle of wine. And so if I was going to say, okay, I'm going to have this Pinot Noir with my pizza on Thursday, and maybe I won't finish the bottle and I want to have that Pinot Noir again next Tuesday because we're going to have, you know, this prosciutto and fig flatbread, that would not work.
No, you gotta have a second bottle for that.
Right. With sake, you can open 4 bottles in one night and not feel guilty about it, and try 4 different sakes with that chicken satay, see what works best, and then try all 4 of them later with kung pao chicken 5 days later. And so this whole, like, as I've been trying to strategize with meal planning, I've realized how helpful sake is, maybe more than ever. So I'm going to try both of these with pizza tonight, but I also wanted to open up the next bottle, which is Rihaku, Dance of Discovery. So Rihaku is a brewery from Shimane Prefecture. It's so there's 47 prefectures in Japan. They're kind of like states, and Shimane is the second least populated prefecture in Japan. The producer jokes about it kind of disparagingly, like no one's going to want to come visit Shimane because it's so boring. There's no people there, but it's a really amazing place for agriculture for that precise reason. There's no humans to get in the way of the beautiful agriculture. So they make great sake there, and this is a brewery that's been around for a long time. It has a very young and very kind of forward-thinking master brewer who's also the owner of his brewery. And the Dance of Discovery is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek naming of this sake. It's a recently cultivated hybrid of sake rice that's made for growing in climates that have a lot of shifting between cold and warm during the growing season for rice. And the name of the rice translates into Dance of the Gods. So we wanted to kind of tie that together with Dance of Discovery. This is also a really good pizza pairing. This is a sake that has there is some banana here, but it's kind of a charred banana skin. There's a really nice smoky saline quality to this sake, but it's still really light in body. I think it's pretty unusual in style because normally when you say like smoky or earthy, you're expecting something a little bigger and fuller, but this finish is so light and clean.
I agree 100%. It's one of my favorite sakes, I think, for when you want something that's a little richer, and especially when we're talking about food pairing, can stand up to something slightly more savory. Like I tend to go anytime I'm making like buttery mushrooms with a little bit of garlic, throw some miso in there. This is the sake I'm reaching for. But
that would be perfect.
It's not like there's some other sakes that I've tried with dishes like that they end up almost going a bit too far and kind of like while mushrooms are rich and have a lot of umami, it's not the same thing as a giant piece of steak. And so this is my savory sake that I want it to be a touch lighter. And this is also one of my favorite sakes I've ever had at a range of temperatures, from ice cold all the way to like coffee hot and everything in between. This shows a whole bunch of different aspects. It just opens up in different temperature ranges really nicely.
So just to expand a little more on what you just said. So what Jonathan said is important, and it's not the case for all sakes. For many sakes, there's a point of no return where you have just gone way too hot, and that really is something that should be avoided. I would say that for most sakes, you should really avoid going way too hot. The trying it at room temperature, if you like it that way, it's a good indicator that you can drink it a little warmer. But I know that we see a lot of people just sticking their sake in the microwave because they've had sake at a restaurant where it's hotter than a cup of coffee, and they kind of assume that that's the way to do it. It seems a little antithetical that we're here telling you that the way that you're served sake in many restaurants is actually the wrong way, and you can do a better job at home. But it happens to be the case with sake. I would say that the Bushido that we had before would be a nightmare if you had that super hot. So if you want to err on the side of caution, I wouldn't go any warmer than room temperature until you're really sure that you like a sake on the warmer side.
That's great advice. And I never really go much above 110 degrees even. Like if you got one of those fancy little kitchen thermometers. This guy though, right around body temperature, the Dance of Discovery, I almost get like tomato, like heirloom tomato vibes start to come off of it. That umami really starts to step out. I'm just a huge fan of this. Well, and I love the people that make it too. Like Tanaka-san, when you were describing him, he's one of the smartest people I think I've ever met, and he just has this amazing sense of humor that I feel like it kind of reaches out into his sake, like and how thoughtful and how beautiful they are, but kind of like subtle and subdued at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should talk for a second about glassware because I feel like I bring sake to people's houses who have great wine glasses and they have great wine. And then I bring out the sake and they're like, oh, hold on. Let me go get that sake set that we got or that we bought at Costco, and we're going to go dig it out of the garage. And we went from drinking sake in Zalto wine glasses all of a sudden to drinking sake out of these really sad thimbles where you can't smell anything. What is your recommended sake glass?
I mean, straight out of the bottle or can, ideally, but when that's not an option. Honestly, just any basic classic white wine glass. What I started with, a little stemless. Of course, I'm lucky enough I got the Bushido action on there. But just like a little stemless makes me feel like I get a little closer to some of those Japanese drinking traditions of the smaller cup that you're clutching, really holding in your hand. And maybe I clutch more than other people. Uh,
No, that's a good point. I mean, wine is in stemware because a lot of wine, I mean, a lot of the rules about wine are not touching the bowl of the glass, right? When I go to a dinner party, it's always very obvious which wine glass is mine because there's fingerprints all over it. Because I'm more of a sake drinker than a wine drinker. And with sake, when the body temperature is warming the cup as you're drinking, it really evolves in the cup or the glass, and it adds to your experience in so many different ways. I would say that for me, I just try to avoid too small of a cup. I think it is very nice to pour for other people, but no one has time for that in real life, especially if you're sitting around drinking with people who have like 6-ounce fish bowls of wine in their glass and you have 2 ounces and you're sitting there hoping that someone will notice that you'd like some more sake. I also think it's really important to be able to stick your nose all the way in the glass and experience the aroma. Not all sakes are super exuberant aromatically, but I think it's important to be able to see whether one is or isn't in the beginning. So, I mean, I collect a lot of sake glassware. It usually sits on my shelf. I pulled this one out for tonight, but I end up drinking a lot of sake out of either a stemless wine glass or even just a rocks glass when I'm just casually drinking.
Absolutely. And I see a lot of restaurants use either small water glasses or a rocks glass as well. And I don't hate this as glassware. I think it works really well. Like to your point, it holds as much sake as I'm going to want while everyone's finishing their 10 ounces of Cab Sav. That's the way we do out here in the Midwest, I guess. So, uh, but also it's like to your point, like I grabbed a little example of one of the traditional like wide mouth cups, and
Mm-hmm.
that's such a tiny amount of sake. And it's nice for one drink. Like it's nice for a toast with some friends. And then I immediately, if I'm hosting, I have backup wine glasses. Like ready to go. So it's like, okay, we did that. Cool. I'm going to wash these real quick and put them away. Now we can actually like all have a good time and not thinking about it. Because that's just, I don't know. I feel like a lot of times when my friends and I are hanging out, we're in the kitchen. Like we're not seated around a table with our bottles in easy reach, and everyone's kind of holding their glass the whole time, and that doesn't maybe work as well with that Japanese pouring for everyone else tradition. As much as I love it, and when I can get in with it, I think I prefer a larger wine glass most of the time.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to talk about the fourth sake that we have for tonight. I'm just showing it to you in its original state because you'll see that it's multicolored here. It's very clear at the top and darker at the bottom. So this style of sake nagori means cloudy. It just has some of the solids from production still in the liquid. So in this case, the solids are the dissolved rice. When you begin fermentation, you start with a tank of rice, steamed rice, and water, and moldy rice, and then you add yeast. And throughout fermentation, that rice is dissolving. So by the end of production, you have a tank of what looks like rice porridge. So you can either fully separate the liquid from the solid, or you can allow some of the dissolved rice solids to remain in the liquid. This is a pretty popular style in the US. I don't always love this style because I feel like sometimes the rice sediment gets in the way of the actual expression of the sake. It can make it taste a little more clumsy. But I think that with the Tozai Snow Maiden, it's it's a really perfect balance. I think it's very appealing because it's so different from what we drink in the Western world. It's so creamy, but it has a lot of flavor and expression. I find that this sake, when you smell it, I didn't even carve a lot of pumpkins when I was a kid. So it's not like it's this nostalgia memory, but I instantly feel like my head is inside of a pumpkin, like not a Japanese pumpkin, but one of those, like a jack o' lantern. There's so much of this raw pumpkin and like breakfast radish, but then also really nice tropical fruit, really beautiful honeydew melon. And I think you enter experiencing the sake expecting it to be a little sweet and a little more rich, but it finishes really bright and surprisingly clean. Um, I love having this with Thai food. I like it with Korean food a lot too. I think something that's a little sweet and savory, anything from a like tangy teriyaki sauce to like a red coconut milk curry. I've had this with milder blue cheeses like gorgonzola dolce. It's phenomenal. I just think that this sake, sometimes for geekier people, it seems a little pedestrian, but it comes in handy at so many occasions where I never would have thought of what to drink otherwise.
I posted this one out this week. I'm going to be drinking it later tonight because I have Ty waiting for me when we wrap up here. But we did tacos. We did some takeout from a local place. You know, trying to do that takeout challenge and keep everyone spread the love around a little bit. And there was a blazingly hot habanero salsa along with it that I am bolder than I should be at times and doused my tacos. And when I was thinking about what I could grab that would kind of bring this down a little bit, like beer wasn't great, water was just spreading it around. So I actually pulled out the Snow Maiden. And I think kind of that dual effect of the little bit of extra sweetness in there, but also that texture, that starchy, ricey texture was really not even just like helping save me, but also making the salsa and the tacos taste even better along with all of that going on in my mouth. It was really fantastic and really lovely. So,
And I
Monica, you said earlier you used the word cloudy. Do you prefer that over? I feel like I hear a lot of people say unfiltered.
I do prefer it for multiple reasons. I mean, there's no sake that's truly unfiltered in the term of the solids. If we had truly unfiltered sake, it would be like rice porridge. And there are some very niche styles of sake where you have a bottle that's still fermenting. But that's because the ABV will change every day in a bottle like that. You'll never see that in the US. My real problem with unfiltered is I think it suggests that it's a little more intellectual of a style of sake. Not that this is not intellectual, but
Hmm.
I don't think that you and I would agree that Nigori is the most intellectual style of sake. But when you're drinking unfiltered wine, the presumption is that it's going to be more complex, have more character, more layers to it. Where cloudy sake, sometimes the cloudiness can get in the way. One thing that I wanted to touch on that you brought up that I think is really interesting is talking about how that Nigori sake really toned down the intensity of your tacos and made the tacos taste better. So it's a very different philosophy that we use when pairing sake with food than pairing wine with food. And a lot of it is about exactly what you were talking about is harmony, right? And so there's so many flavors in Japanese food that can be extremely challenging for a wine sommelier. And sake is meant to temper, not only tame down those flavors, but to bring out the best part of the accompanying flavors. And so people say all the time that sake removes the fishiness of fishy foods, which I don't. I mean, I happen to really love sardines and mackerel and pickled fish and things like that.
So
So I
you're
don't.
not looking to remove that.
Yeah, I'm not looking to remove that, but I find that it still makes those foods taste better. And the same with bitter greens. I happen to really love kale and radicchio and broccoli rabe. I don't drink sake with it because I want to remove that bitterness, but it really makes the like springtime green quality of that sake of the vegetables more intense to me. So there's that balance of harmony that's so I think it's a little more nuanced and subjective, which is why I think it's easier for a lot of people to think about how wine pairs with food and how tannins in red wine can accommodate fatty cuts of meat and those things are a little more on the nose for people. But I think the beauty of being able to harmonize with strong flavors and not just calm them down but make them better is where sake really shines.
Absolutely. I love to use the comparison that I think a lot of times when I've been looking to pair wine with a specific food or specific dish, I'm looking at kind of a contrasting style of pairing where I'm looking to bounce those acidities and bounce those tannins off of the food. Whereas with sake, like you used this word harmony a couple times. And I think of it as more of a complementary style. Like you're grabbing some of the same flavors and literally some of the same chemical components that lead to those flavors are the same in the dish and in the sake. And so everything is, like you said, harmonizing, tasting better, this enhancement of flavor for everything. So it's not just one or the other that tastes better, the sake tastes better and the food tastes better at the same time. I'd love to flash that choose your sake, find your perfect sake match up for everyone. This is like some materials I remember you made a number of years ago, and it's just so lovely because I think we can kind of look at this, we can kind of pick and choose what it is we're meal planning throughout the week and find a bottle that's going to last us for a few different meals. Like you'll notice we have that Dance of Discovery on the far right side. It's umami flavored, lighter body, short finish. So you can think about doing some mushroom dishes on Tuesday, and then it's going to be good for another 2 weeks after you open it. But, wrap back around to like, what would you do? Like short ribs? Like where would you go on, say, Saturday when you have a little more time to prep?
I would do something like blackened shrimp. I
Mm.
mean, I don't know if Dance of Discovery can really handle beef, but I think charred squid, blackened shrimp, kale that's on the grill and has kind of a crispy. There's so much smoke in that sake, but it's not heavy, that I love anything with a little tinge of smoke. And I really love this chart too. And what I think is really nice is most people are so married to, if they know a little bit about sake, they can't break away from that junmai, ginjo, daiginjo mentality. And the problem with that is these categories refuse to follow the rules, right? And so for every ginjo that you taste where you're like, okay, I get it, ginjo is meant to be um, pretty aromatic but still nice acidity, medium bodied, you're going to have a ginjo that does not behave accordingly at all. And so if we created a chart that said, okay, junmai sakes are always going to go with roast beef and ginjo sakes are always going to go with scallop sashimi, it would not serve anyone at all. But and most of those people we're talking to would say, God, I can't remember if junmai is supposed to be the earthy one or the pretty one. But everyone knows what earthy and savory versus fruity and floral are, and people know what light bodied and full bodied and short and long finish. We've been using these terms with wine for so long, and so I think it actually gives you an idea of what's going to be in the glass rather than feeling like you have to go Google and then still not really understand what may or may not be on the other side of the bottle.
Absolutely. Well, and then what's the classic Japanese saying? Sake picks no fights with food.
Exactly.
So I don't think we have to worry too much about being wrong.
Yeah. Have you ever had a really bad sake pairing?
Literally a single time, and it sticks out so hard, and it was with konyaku, like something that's already so hard to pair with. But literally, we just moved on to a different sake, and it was instantly good. Like I found one sake in my whole career with sake that did not work with a single dish. Definitely some work better with certain dishes, but it's really hard to find one that just is no bueno, as they say in Japan.
For me, it would probably be flaming hot Cheetos. I think I was getting a little cocky and I was having so much success with like goldfish and Fritos and like Chex Mix, and I doubled down and challenged someone to flaming hot Cheetos, and the beer won hands down. But I think you have to really work hard to find a bad sake pairing.
That tale as old as time. You were Icarus in that moment, flying too close to the flaming hot Cheeto. I think it's super forgiving, and and maybe like I think the idea here and what we're hoping to share with everybody is that there's no reason to be afraid of having sake in the fridge. Like, take home a bottle, open it on Monday, literally 2 weeks later, it's still going to be tasting great. You're going to get a lot of use out of it. Not even everyone in your household needs to be a sake lover for, I think, you to be able to get through that bottle in a way that it's still tasting absolutely great.
And the one thing that I will just add, if by chance you really buy a bottle of sake and you're like, wow, this is just really not my thing. If you buy it from us, that's probably not going to happen because we have really good descriptions and we ensure that we're shipping you fresh sake that's in great condition. But if you do end up with a bottle of sake where you're like, God, this is just terrible, there's still no reason to dump it down the drain. Being in the kitchen a lot more, I've been cooking with sake a lot more often, but some of my favorite things to do with sake other than drink it are sake steamed mussels and clams, sake poached shrimp. If you are cooking rice using about maybe an eighth of a cup of sake in place of water in your cooked rice, makes it so much more fragrant. I cook soba noodles and I just pour a little sake over the noodles before dipping it in the soba broth, the soba dipping sauce, and it makes a huge change. When you use it in a marinade, it really does tenderize meat. And so there is no reason that you shouldn't always have a bottle of sake open in your fridge. I really hope that you find a way to get to the bottom of the bottle. It's never been a problem for me. But if you ever shouldn't be able to, there are plenty of other things that you can do with it.
I think we had a question someone had about nigori. You'll have to forgive me. I accidentally closed the chat, and I'm a little worried about doubling down on audio if I reopened it.
I can't see anything except my own face. I haven't seen your face or anything.
I'm going to try and see if we can get that back up, because it sounds like somebody had a question. So let me see if I can pull that up without making big disturbances here. Is there, so Monica, what was your, I know you asked me my favorite glassware. What was your favorite glassware to use? Just like all-purpose sake glassware.
I usually like to have two glasses in front of me. If I'm writing, when I'm trying to write tasting notes, I always go back and forth between something like this, that's a little more traditional and a little more closed, and something like this, that's a little more aromatic, to see how it works. And I generally prefer those to like the big flat open mouth cups and glasses, because I do think that whether it's like that ginjo purity of fruit and floral or it's more umami, that kind of straight up and down linear, like being pushed up through the middle of the glass is a better way to experience it. I know that it's super subjective and you can feel free to disagree with me, and you are also right. But for me, I don't like a glass with the mouth any bigger than this.
Like you just want that level of concentration on the aromatics, even for something that's crazy aromatic, like those really effusive ginjos. Wow. Okay, cool.
I mean, if I'm going to go there, I like it. I want to experience everything.
I'll say, I absolutely think I agree with what you're saying, 100% there. The one thing I might toss in though is a buddy of mine who runs a restaurant in Ohio, Ushabu. If you're ever in Cleveland, check it out. It's the best shabu shabu I've had in the U.S. Has a really interesting take on how different styles of glassware can really affect sake. And it's some like 301 graduate level course sake glassware stuff. But my takeaway from it was after a long night, he gave me a rich, like even richer than the Dance of Discovery that we tried from Rihaku, a really rich savory junmai in a martini glass. And it was really interesting. The shape your mouth makes really, as you're approaching that glass, really affects the way it travels across your tongue and makes the impact of that umami bomb even more powerful right away.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the new Riedel Junmai glass is kind of like a martini coupe, like a more angular martini coupe. And I've drank a lot of Yuho out of that glass, and it's been quite delicious.
It looks like, I think what I might have missed was Chris Melton asked, what's the shelf life on Bushido? I would say 5 to 10 seconds, depending on how quick you drink. I mean, it's, as a style, it's a really sturdy style of sake. Like those aromatics are not going to die very quickly. So honestly, I mean, 2-3 weeks in the fridge, but it's only a little can, my dude. Like,
oh, if you've met Chris Melton, he could drink like a case of Bushido.
It's so awesome. There's so many friends who are popping by and saying hi to everybody out there. So we tasted our 4 sakes. We talked about some glassware. We talked about making sake a little more approachable with just kind of like get creative with sake cocktails. Don't overthink it. And there's people out there who you can pay lots of money to overthink it for you and go enjoy the beauty of their labor. But Monica, are there any other thoughts that you'd like to get out in the world?
No, if there's anything that you'd like us to do to show you guys in the future, if you want to do more of these kind of explorations of diving into smaller formats so you can try a variety at once, we can also show you some interesting things with temperature and cocktails. Some of my favorite things to do, I'm not a mixologist like my colleague over here, but I do have a lot of fun splashing a little like miso soup or dashi into a warm sake, and we can do a deeper dive into umami. So if you guys have any requests or preferences, we are all here to stay home and drink sake together. So thanks for joining us, and come by.
Come by. Guys, we'll look forward to having you next time. And cheers, everyone. Be healthy and be safe, okay? Have a good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Light as a feather when I'm floating through, reading through the daily news, measuring the hurt within the golden rule. Centimeters of ether, I'm heating the speaker. Motivational teacher with words that burn people. Singing the headlines, line with discord. It's either genocide or the planet in uproar. Never good. The rules in paradise are never nice. The best laid plans of mice and men are never right. I'm just a vagabond with flowers for Algernon, an average Joe who knows what the fuck is going on. It's the hope of my thoughts that I travel upon. Fly like an arrow of God until I'm gone. So drifting away like a feather in air, letting my words take me away from the hurt and despair. So I'm keeping it vertical, forever elevator, riding the escalator to the something that is greater. So I'm drifting away like a feather in air, letting my soul take me away from the hurt and despair. So I'm keeping it vertical, forever elevator, riding the escalator to the something that is greater.
Taking chances, word tap dancing with wolves in an ice arena out there deep in the woods of Arizona. The sun be out, life's ironic, ain't it? Trying to be Dali when I write surreal life, I painted vivid. Habitat crazy, insane. Watching propaganda, 6 o'clock, news and insane. Cultures clash, poor black folk and white trash. Them rebels